Okay, I think we'll get started here. Let me introduce to you Ms. Linda Jackson, who's the Director of the Department of Forensic Science. Ms. Jackson was initially appointed as the Director of the Virginia Department of Forensic Science by Governor McDonnell on February 25, 2013, to fulfill an unexpired term. She was reappointed by Governor McAuliffe effective December 26, 2017 for a 6-year term. Mrs. Jackson has a BS degree in chemistry from Wake Forest University and an MS in chemistry from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. She is with us this morning to discuss with us current issues at the lab. So thank you very much for coming this morning.
I appreciate the opportunity to come and share a few things with you that are related to the Department of Forensic Science. The first thing I wanted to share just briefly is we do have a new Northern Lab Director, Scott May, who was promoted from Chemistry Program Manager. And for those of you in the northern part of our state, he's going to be reaching out to you to introduce himself. And so I just wanted to show you his picture and let you know who he is in case he contacts you. I wanted to give a little brief update on our Central Laboratory Capital project to build a new facility. I know that one of the issues that law enforcement has with our current location in Richmond, for those of you that travel to the lab for either submission of evidence or the classes that we teach through our forensic training, is our lack of parking. And we have purchased, or we are in the process, I will say, of purchasing land up in Hanover County that will allow us to build a new facility that will have also the medical examiner's office co-located and will have 351 parking places, which will be sufficient for all of our training needs. And so it will be right off the interstate, so hopefully it will be easy to get to, although you can see from the schedule that it is a few years out. But it is certainly something we've been looking forward to and are glad to have a little progress. For those of you that have breath alcohol instruments at your locations, I just wanted to give a brief update that we are still in the works of enhancing those instruments that you have at your locations. We are looking to enhance both their connectivity with a high-speed connection instead of a modem, and also being able to replace the dot matrix printers with laser printers. And so we're still working with the manufacturer to have that happen, and that will extend the life of those instruments significantly. And so we'll certainly let you know, but your operators that you have in your offices will only have to have a small amount of training with these enhanced systems instead of if we had bought new systems, and that would have required a complete retraining of all of the operators. So it's good fiscally for both us as the department and for you as your agency. I wanted to give a really short kind of update of where we are with our backlogs and turnaround times. You can see that we have been decreasing our backlogs in some of our high volume case sections, such as drugs, has just started to go down, and I'll give you a little bit of more information about that. Forensic biology, or DNA, is also going down, as is firearms. And so these are ones that the turnaround times had gotten fairly long, and we've gotten some resources and put those in place, and we are starting to see the benefit of that with our turnaround times starting to go down. If you are ever interested in seeing where we are with turnaround times, they are posted on our website, and the address is there. Hopefully this presentation will be made available to all of you afterwards. But that is on our website. It's updated every month, and it's the average of the cases that were completed the month prior. With controlled substances, I know that our turnaround times have gotten very long, and it affects not only the criminal justice process with court, but also with people in jails awaiting trial. And so just to give you a small update with that, we have an outsourcing contract in place where we are sending certain cases that are simple possession with 1 or 2 items to an external vendor who is authorized by us to do this testing, and so the certificates would be admissible. And that is happening in our northern, central, and western areas of the state. We also received 12 new forensic scientists in the budget, and all of those folks are hired, and 7 of them are scheduled to finish training next week and the week after. And that's 4 forensic scientists for drug analysis in our Roanoke lab and 3 in our northern lab, which are the areas that have the longest turnaround times right now. So that will be a great influx of scientific power there to work on cases, and so hopefully our backlogs will continue to improve. The one thing that is currently something that we are spending a lot of resources trying to get straight is the effects for our analysis to differentiate hemp and marijuana, because as you can see from these pictures, one of those is hemp and one of them is marijuana, and you cannot tell the difference by looking at them or doing our traditional testing. You have to do some sort of evaluation of the concentration of THC in the plant. The other picture at the bottom is what is currently being sold as a hemp product in a lot of stores, and that's just a bud of the cannabis plant in a bag or in a can, and it's sold as hemp flower or hemp bud. And so those hemp products have been removed from the definition of marijuana, so we have to do additional work to prove whether or not the THC is sufficient to make them fall under the definition of marijuana or hemp. So our challenges are we did not have any methods to quantify that THC content in plant material prior to this law going into effect, which did have an emergency clause, so it's been in effect since March when the governor signed the legislation. So we have been working with the DEA to collaboratively develop methods and develop a new analytical scheme for how we're going to analyze these particular samples. So I did send out a notice to all law enforcement and attorneys in May that made sure that everybody understood that the Duquesnoy-Levine kit that we have been giving to everyone cannot differentiate between marijuana and hemp, and kind of where we are with our method development. And that is on our website if you are interested, with the address on the slide. We have been working to validate, again, we've been working with the DEA to do some co-validation of a new field test called the Swiss or 4AP test. We have received a grant from the Department of Criminal Justice Services to purchase about 16,000 of these kits that we can distribute to law enforcement. We're going to distribute them in the same manner that we distribute the Duquesnoy-Levine test. We have just put the purchase order in place, and so hopefully within the next 4 weeks we will have those and can start distributing them. The one thing that we know about that test is that it does not stand alone. There are non-controlled substances that turn the kit blue, which is positive for the drug marijuana. And so we need to use this new kit in conjunction with the Duquesnoy-Levine kit. So you need to do the Duquesnoy-Levine kit first to show that, yes, you have cannabis, and then you would do the new test to determine what kind of cannabis you have, whether you have hemp cannabis or drug cannabis. The way it works, it does not actually determine a concentration of THC, but it evaluates the ratio of how much THC is present versus how much CBD or cannabidiol is present, which is the compound that people are looking for in high concentrations for hemp. So generally the scheme will be that you would do first, if you have plant material where the affirmative defense is being raised, or if it is a hemp product, either purported or labeled as such, that you would first do the Duquesnoy-Levine kit. If that's positive, you would then go to the typification test. If you get a blue result, that means there's more THC in there than CBD, which means it's most likely marijuana, and you would send that to the lab. If you get a pink result, then there's more CBD than THC. That's most likely hemp. You can handle that through the regulatory process. And if you get an inconclusive result, you can send those to the lab. So then, once we would get those into the lab, we could then do a screening test. If it was positive blue, we could do a screening test where we could evaluate somewhat quickly that the concentration of THC is above 1%, and then we could report those out as marijuana without knowing the exact value. If it's close or below 1%, we could do, if requested, we could do an actual quantitative test where we would measure the value. The other thing that I wanted to talk about real quick is the PERC tracking system. I think most people are aware that there was an inventory done. There was actually 2 different inventories done prior to legislation being enacted in 2016 that required most physical evidence recovery kits for sexual assaults to be submitted to the lab for testing. And so before that, there were a fair number of kits that had never been submitted and are now being analyzed by Bodie Technologies through a grant that the Attorney General secured. And so in order to not get in that situation again, there was also grant funds received to create the software to track where these sexual assault kits are, and it goes from the very beginning when we hand them out to hospitals to when the hospitals collect samples and submit them to law enforcement, and then when law enforcement submits them to the lab or stores them, and then finally when they are destroyed. And so the software, there's nothing to buy. It is all just on the web, and legislation went into effect on July 1st that had a delayed enactment clause requiring the use of the PERC tracking software as of July 1st, 2020. So right now we're in a beta testing stage, and we're trying to sign up folks to get onboarded so that we can get everyone trained before 2020. And so there is a table out in the hall that is right next to the heat table that has a lot of signs. Our table doesn't have a lot of signs. If you would like to stop and just give us the contact information at your agency of who our folks should contact to get the training and have your agency signed up. And I just wanted to quickly just show you a couple screenshots from that. It's very simple. This is the screen for where you would receive a PERC. There's no identifying information. No, this is the one, the receive screen, because really all you do is you receive the kits, you give the kits to someone else, you destroy the kits. Law enforcement that stores the kits does have the authority to generate a PIN number that you can give to a survivor so that they can check the status of where their kit is. Again, there's no identifying information in here. The only thing that you enter is the serial number from the kit and who you received it from and what the day is. And then we'll like when it comes into the lab, it'll say it's in the lab for testing. Once the lab report is done, it'll say it's done. And so that's all the survivor will be able to see. The one other thing that law enforcement will do is if the kit is not submitted to the lab for testing, there is a place in here to designate which of the 5 statutory reasons you have for not submitting it to the lab. And then the Department of Forensic Science is responsible, as per the code, to submit a report to the General Assembly on the statistics gathered from this tracking system once a year in November. And thank you very much, and I'll be out in the hall at least, through lunch if anybody has any questions. Thank you.